Welcome to the riskadvisor.com podcast. I am Jim Henry here with my good friend and co-host Sal Lafreri. Today's topic, facial recognition. In today's world, everything is questioned and second-guessed. Mostly everything is wrong to someone. Technology is advancing and is presenting challenges we could never anticipate. Social pressures are being exerted at great levels. Security providers and developers must try to maintain a relationship with clients and live between what is good technology and what is bad technology and the client's benefit. The shiny new toy of today is tomorrow's old hat. Walking that line has become a critical element in today's world. So, Sal, no challenges there, right?
We could have done a whole show just on that. God, Jesus. Yeah, unintended consequences. That's the thing that just keeps ringing through to my head with all of this, right? You have new technologies, for starters, right? You got the technology that gets developed and there's no law to cover it. And you find that, people are utilizing it in bad ways or in ways that we wind up realizing that we wind up with a victimization. And then you wind up with other technology issues come up. And you find that, you're pissing somebody off somewhere along the line. And the line that you got to walk today is just incredible, right? You're trying to do the right thing for the client. You want to make the right offer. Right? You want to bring the right technologies in, and you wind up with, outside groups and outside influences starting to attack the technology and start attacking what you want to do. And, there are times when we've said this, off air a number of times where you sit there, you just shake your head and you go, what are you supposed to do? How do you react to this stuff? So unintended consequences, it's just one of those things. And I think today's topic, highlights that.
Well, the criticism gets misdirected. It's not about good and bad technology. It's how the technology is used. And that's
actually how it's perceived, not even how it's used. It's how it's perceived.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Let's get to our guest.
Yes. With us today, joining us for the second time, we're glad to have back, is Alan Stoddard. Alan is an experienced global security technology executive with a long background in security and telecommunications as vice president and general manager of Verint's Situational Intelligence Solutions business unit for the past 4 years. Has helped transform this VMS supplier into a global leader in developing and delivering intelligent security solutions for mission-critical environments. He has a degree in aerospace engineering from MIT. Prior to Verint, held senior management positions with Honeywell, Security, AMX, and Nortel Networks.
Hey, Jim.
So,
thrilled to be
Alan,
here.
Welcome.
Jim, Sal.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So we're hearing a lot of discussion about facial recognition in the market. What is the reality in terms of how facial recognition is being adopted in today's environment?
Yeah, well, I think you alluded to it, right, to a certain extent, unintended consequences, but it's varied. I remember we were just talking about trade shows and when we can get back to a trade show here after COVID. But the last 2-3 years, go out to Vegas and all you saw was facial recognition, biometrics, and artificial intelligence, and it was going to take over the world. And the reality in terms of what we've seen has been much more mixed, right? Certainly there are pockets and areas where the adoption has been very high, penetration is great, but there's been a lot of misses, right? For all sorts of reasons we talked about. And I don't think it's really, despite the capabilities of the technology, this is one of those areas that I think is a fascinating case study, and technology isn't enough, right? It's got to be the right alignment of technology, of business case, of regulation and acceptance in the marketplace, and any number of other things to really get to the tipping point for some of these capabilities to really hit their stride. And with respect to facial recognition, certainly we're not there yet. It has been an uneven journey to this point.
Right. A few years ago, it's probably 5 years ago now, Ray Coulombe founder and president of Security Specifiers, and a fellow MIT grad.
Yeah, I know, right?
And a real industry evangelist. Had a great session down at TechSec in Florida, and he called it the Battle of the Body Parts. And so you've got a very educated audience there at TechSec, and it was like a bake-off presentations between people who were doing fingerprint biometric technology, vascular, iris, all the different technologies, including facial, for each to make their case. And at the end of the presentations, Ray took a poll within the audience as to what did the audience think was going to be the surviving biometric to come out of this. And overwhelmingly, the vote was facial recognition, that eventually that would win the day because of its ease of use, the ergonomics, and of course now in a COVID environment where you're dealing with concerns about, fingerprint, validation for multi-factor. You don't have that issue with facial. And as a rule, you wear your face out there in public and you're allowing people to see who you are. So the violation of your privacy is much more diminished. And, you're not exposing yourself to, the illumination or whatnot of your retina or what people perceive to be, even if it's iris recognition, something that's going to damage your eye. So again, I think that the common belief within our industry continues to be and is accelerated now that facial will be it. And I think our challenges have moved from the accuracy of the technology to just the acceptance of its use politically, right?
Yeah, so much there, right? And I think generally you're right, but it's interesting. Sometimes we kind of get caught up in what's the silver bullet, right? What's the one solution that's going to work? And I think we always need to think about the fact that lots of different solutions can coexist depending on the unique requirements and the specific requirements of the use case, right? And sometimes different elements drive the decision making. Whether it's is 95% accuracy okay, or do you need 99.99% accuracy, right? How much cost are you willing to deploy? What's the environment? Do you have limited throughput, on people, and they can go through a turnstile or a gate or an iris reader, or are you trying to do mass, acceptance in a lobby where you're looking at tens and 20s of people coming through in high volume? So I think different use cases when it comes to analytics, all of these capabilities will continue to coexist. But back to the point, I think human evolution tells us there's real value in terms of, facial recognition. That's how we live, right? That's how society's grown up. We don't look, check out people's irises, and we don't ask them for their, for their thumbprints. And the technology, to your point, certainly has come a very long way. Now there's, I think when you start to talk about facial recognition, there's still a pretty good span of capabilities. There's a lot of solutions out there today that are so-so, right, for cheap and free, and to get a really high degree of accuracy and speed, and minimize some of the biases that exist in the technology. You need higher processing, higher degree of training and learning, et cetera, but they can be very good. So I think there's a lot of things to recommend facial recognition for a lot of use cases and applications out there. And to your point, fundamentally, the technology today is really, truly incredible. We've seen, we've done a lot of demonstrations for our customers, going through with hard hats on and safety goggles on and on the face and all sorts of things. And it is truly better than the human eye in almost every measure today. And that would recommend it for a lot of solutions, right, that we're trying to put in place. And that certainly is the state of the art, and it's out there. So that, to your point, that really should not be an impediment at this stage.
It makes you kind of wonder if you look at it in totality, where we are today with facial recognition, and you line that up next to social media. You just wonder where we would have gone through with fingerprinting if social media would have been around at the time. It's just too many people being able to take shots at it, too many people being able to question it. The conversation becomes a whole lot more, both good and bad, right? The conversation becomes a whole lot more involved with the advent of social media. Yeah. And you just wonder, you bring out a new technology with facial recognition, and you go back to fingerprinting, and you go, gee, I wonder what would have happened back then if it would have had the same outcry.
Well, it certainly amplifies the that voice, right, and that element of the voice. I think that's always been out there to a certain extent, though, with new technologies and new capabilities. It's whether it reaches the volume that we have today or not, I think is a real question. As you say, I sometimes I stop and think about facial recognition. I like to think about it, the introduction of the automobile 120 years ago, and my God, we can't have these automobiles, flying around. They could run into people. They could run into each other, right? There's no way to manage it. There's an intersection, and who's going to decide which one goes? And you're going to have an accident. You're going to kill people. Let's ban the whole darn thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not about the capability. It's about where we are as a society in terms of our understanding of it and our policies and rules to utilize it correctly, right? And the reality is, unfortunately, there is no doubt that there are places in the world where the technology has been misused, right? Absolutely no doubt. Countries and other organizations have misused the technology. And so, some of that concern is bred through that real misuse. But we tend to be reactive, right? And instead of simply saying, okay, how do we put the right guide rails in place? How do we put the right policies and procedures and regulations in place, right? We tend to sometimes jump to throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
That'll take us into the next area we'd like to talk about is success stories. But before we get into that, we just want to remind you that you're listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by Jim Henry and Sal Lafreri. We ask you to download and subscribe to the show and rate us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Also, follow us on our social media pages like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you happen to be interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event or would like to consult with either one of us or both of us, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com to set that up. So, Alan, we talked about some of the problematic areas and some of the misuses, but let's talk about some of the success stories you're seeing. Where is it really having a positive impact?
Yeah, it really is incredible. I think we directly have seen quite a few success stories out there, and I'm sure there are hundreds, thousands of stories that we don't necessarily have visibility to, but we just some that to me are really meaningful and powerful and that hit home, for us when you look at the context of what this technology can do it and what would be very challenging to do otherwise. We deployed it in a hospital, and there was a young nurse who had been abused by her partner, and there was a restraining order, and literally, she did not feel safe coming to work until the technology was deployed and the ability to make sure that that individual was not coming into the hospital without security getting flagged right before he was able to get anywhere close to where she was. And so this is a woman who was given back her ability to work and fulfill her her role in what she was looking to do in life. We've deployed it in retail environments, right, where we were able to use it to help capture abductors of children, right? And so, could this have been done otherwise without the automation of facial recognition, going through a ton of a video and doing that in a non-automated fashion, maybe, right? But as we know, time for something like that is critical, and the ability to speed that up, 100-fold with automated procedures almost certainly played a very large role in the ability to recover that individual. We've seen it deployed in a large, public setting in Southeastern Asia, very high-profile public event with great security concerns. And, we were able to identify over 20 known suspected terrorists that were entering into that restricted area that could have posed a significant threat to a high-level government figure, right? And they were able to be identified and questioned, before they were able to enter that area. So, the capabilities, I think, combined with the ability of video solutions today, the speed at which it can do, the accuracy, which is greater than the human eye at this point, there are things that we can do to keep people safe and secure people, secure facilities, secure areas that, in the day and age that we live in, everybody should be powerful, for all of us, to make sure that we're living in a safe